to take your seat?
Yeah.
These are comfortable chairs, aren't they? I'm just stay here.
So, Adam, let's start because we have a timer here. First of all, can you tell us more about Climate Group and its role in the creation of Climate Week New York City?
Yeah, totally. So Climate Group is actually turning 20 years old this year. So actually older than some people in this room, which is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. It really started from, we felt, and some of the founders that started it all off, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tony Blair, if you can remember them, felt there was a gap in the market, that there wasn't a positive non-profit that was working proactively with business and proactively with government to create change. And so today, Climate Group, we have offices in New York, where I'm based, London, which is our global HQ, Amsterdam, New Delhi, and Shanghai. And that's what we try and do. We try and work with business and government. We work with over 500 big businesses. We work with 176 subnational governments, so that's 14 states here in the US. And we try and create structures and models and programs and campaigns that help us achieve climate action. And Climate Week NYC started, it was our 15th year last year, and the idea was we need to bring people together to have conversations to work out how we do this a lot more quickly. And over those 15 years, we've seen it go in a number of different directions, and I guess that's what I'm here to talk about with you today.
That's good. So how has Climate Week New York City changed since it was created 15 years ago, and what story does that tell about the climate movement more generally?
So I guess those in the room who've been here for a longer period of time, you'll remember that 10, 15 years ago, for a CEO to come on stage, and of course it wasn't then the CEO, it would be the CSO or someone from comms, getting on stage and saying climate change is real and we must do something about it, that was enough to get an applause from the room. That's just not good enough anymore. We need to look at how do you stop just saying it, but turning into something that actually happens. And so, also climate change isn't just one thing, it's many, many different things. The conversations taking place this morning, I think, really shows that. I mean, fantastic speakers this morning. And you're looking at things from the mental health of children, through to carbon capture, through to green jobs and technology. What we really want to try and do is create the biggest possible audience and group that we can bring together so that people can find their own way to make the connections that they need. And something that we really started to do about 5 years ago is how can we bring forward the next generation of climate activists to be part of this conversation too. We had 600 events last year at Climate Week NYC, which is pretty crazy. One of the things I always love is when you meet someone who has a significant role in government or in business, and they say, oh, I went to Climate Week when I was a student, and I met this person that gave me a lead, that gave me a job, that gave me experience. And I think that's something that we try and do, is open it up so there's more cultural pieces taking place. There's just more things spread out across the 5 boroughs of New York City. So that's the change, I think, that we've seen. I think that's a change that's reflected across the climate sector as well.
I think people are noticing that climate change is not really affecting one or two little areas of our lives. It's basically every single area. So everybody has to join forces.
Absolutely.
For the people in the room today, how can events like Climate Week New York City or climate correction create opportunities for impact?
So I think my philosophy in life, I'm not sure if this is an American saying, but it's certainly a saying in Britain where I'm originally from, be cheeky.
Shameless.
Shameless. Like, the best things you will ever get in life are the things that don't cost money. You just have to ask. And like on the screen, you can see, this is a great example, posters. We have posters all over New York City. And people say, wow, you must have a huge budget. How do you manage that? We don't have any budget on this. We found someone at JC&Co, a woman called Gabrielle, who's fantastic, who really cares about this. And so we knocked on the door, and it's a big door. They're based in the Empire State Building. And we said, we really want to use your platform to engage more people, to have posters focused on action on the ground so that they can get involved. And she said, I love that idea. I'll give you 100 bus stops in the most central places in New York City. I got a random text message from a guy on Twitter saying, I write for late night TV. How would you feel about taking over some of those shows during Climate Week? And I thought, this is a crazy person on Twitter. It's not going to be real. He got in Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, James Corden, Stephen Colbert, huge celebrities involved in that. These things come out of being cheeky and asking people for stuff. And it's not just about the big glitzy, glamorous marketing pieces. It's also about the things that your respective organizations or causes want to do. If you don't ask, you don't get. And I think events like this today, I've been having fantastic conversations with people, but events like Climate Week as well, and things throughout the year, identifying what you need and going up to the people that can provide that and telling a story to them is just a really effective way of getting stuff done. And having no budget, or you don't need to be a specialist. I didn't go to university. I just got cheeky. You can find your route. It will happen if you keep pushing. So that's what I think these events can be really good at doing.
Yeah, you talk about the importance of cultural relevance to engage wider audiences. Can you give some examples of where this has been done particularly well?
So the role of art is something that I think is really, really important. Number one, it's a great way of engaging new audiences, both in terms of seeing the art, but the process of creating it as well. We worked with a fantastic NGO called Junk Couture for the last few years. They get young people in schools to create the most beautiful couture gowns out of recycled materials. Things like this have a really good role to play in engaging new audiences, and the media loves it as well. You've got to think about the media story if you want to get attention these days. But we're also looking at other areas where it can have more of a sort of meaningful difference as well. I think one of the talks early on talked about the role that art can play when young people are experiencing mental health issues. That's a really interesting area that I'd love to see more of. We're working with an organization called the Wellcome Trust to see how can we use big, major pieces of art in New York City to involve more people. That cultural piece is really interesting. I think sometimes we look at the world as if there's some cultural people over there who are big celebrities and they're singers and they're this, that, the other, and then you've got the CEOs and the politicians over here. And we forget that every artist is a CEO.
With the power to make the changes.
But every artist is a business person. Every artist has to worry about the bottom line at the end of the day as well. They need to engage with new audiences. They need to understand audiences. Every CEO, every person in government, they have a heart and soul too. Sometimes it's easy to forget that, but it's true. And so actually looking at things like culture, it's a great way of merging these audiences together. Through my job, I often speak to a lot of CEOs or presidents of organizations. I always find it really interesting when the camera turns off and you're speaking backstage, they talk about how it's their grandchildren speaking to them about how they're worried about climate change that really resonates with them. And these folks run the board. They influence how things go in the company. So I do think these different routes of talking to people is a really effective way of making big change amongst the big players.
In art, like our founder, Thais Lopez says, it engages people from the emotional level.
Absolutely.
So it's a different touch, I would think. What are the challenges that events such as Climate Week New York City face when it comes to ensuring you bringing broader audiences to engage with?
I think it's tricky because you've got to be super practical. At the end of the day, there are some issues in this fight where you require senior leaders to go into a room and for that door to be closed to negotiate what needs to be done, whether it's a funding issue or whether it's a policy issue. And so it is necessary that there are times where these things need to be done behind closed doors because that's how you build that trust within these power structures. And we don't shy away from that. I think the program that we create and the US Climate Action Summit, which is coming up next month in DC, we shamelessly have lots of closed door bits because we think that's really effective. But you can't shut the door on the hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the country and around the world who want to engage. And it's not enough by saying, yes, but we do all this stuff in the community. We need a way of bringing these audiences together.
Or those who need to learn too. Because
all those who need to learn.
Are completely oblivious of what's going on, even if it's right in front of their eyes.
Exactly. And so you've got to be creative and think, how can you engage more people? I think one great example is film culture, but film specifically. We've seen a huge growth in people coming to us during Climate Week NYC who want to present films. And I think film is fantastic because actually a lot of people who want to get involved in climate are perhaps not as confident as everyone in this room to come and sit in a room and meet people. They kind of want to consume in their own time. And it was fantastic to work with VoLo Foundation last year on your film Canary to make sure we're helping bring that to a broader audience. Shout out to Canary. And it's funny how these things happen. It's that piece of cheekiness again. That was a really positive experience. I'm having like 3 meetings a week at the moment about how can we make film a really big major part of Climate Week NYC, and how can we use every single favor and connection to create something big so that can engage a whole new audience. We're talking to people from the music industry as well. It's great, of course, to have a celebrity endorsing you, but it's pretty meaningless if there's nothing to back that up. How can we use these different groups to engage with different audiences? So that's, I think, a nice example of how I've experienced seeing that development of engagement.
VoLo also supported a documentary, a 2-part documentary called Extreme Green that's soon to be coming out in National Geographic. So it's
Extreme
all about
green,
climate.
like the
Extreme
shirt.
green, it's all green. Well, this is beige.
Beige.
It's earth. What would be your advice for those wanting to get involved in Climate Week New York City?
So I think, and I touched on this earlier on in terms of don't ask, don't get. I think it's really important, especially people in this room who are going into the world of climate, to understand how power works in terms of making change and understanding how you can be part of that sort of flow of power. When I came in as the head of Climate Week in 2018, not from New York City, from London.
I'm sure nobody figured that one
No
out.
one figured that one
Everybody
out.
thought you were from New York.
I've only been living here a year, though, so the accent's not getting there yet. But yeah, I had no power, no connections. There's no... I don't have a negotiating stance for getting people to give stuff that helps grow Climate Week and helps fight climate action. But what you can do is meet people and listen and learn and engage. Exactly what was happening here last night when people are talking with each other. Exactly what's happening now over lunch and after this session. Meeting people and learning and hearing stories. And you'll get to a point where you'll realize that the person you're speaking to is saying, I really need to meet someone who's a specialist in this or passionate about that. And you can say, oh, I know that person. And you link the dots. And you keep going through life, linking the dots. And then suddenly something will happen before you even realize it, which is you suddenly become one of those dots that people link you to. Power is not a thing that exists in a single space. It's always something that flows, even in like real life with power stations. It's all about the flow. And through listening and learning, and it's not just through being at events, through listening to things like podcasts. I know you have a very fantastic podcast. I would be remiss if I don't do a shout out to our own, which is 50 Shades of Green. But there's so many other things. There's so many things out there where you can learn. You can learn who the players are. You can learn what the issues are. You can learn which areas you feel most passionate about. And then you use that experience to join the dots. And I think that's how you can get involved. That's how you can make a difference.
And that's how you get the full picture.
It's how you get the full picture.
Once you get all the dots together.
I must have interviewed hundreds of people for various different roles at Climate Week over the years. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care about where you grew up. But if you've got an interesting story about how you spoke to person A, B, and C about what they've done, and you've got a view on it, and you know this person over here, and you know, that's why people get hired in this world. That's where people bring value. So that's my advice for people that want to be involved. And we try through the program at Climate Week NYC.
And be cheeky.
And be cheeky.
Yeah.
That should be our strapline this year, cheeky, get cheeky. 600 events, they're split into 10 different themes. After COVID, well, during COVID, we took a lot of those things online, and we've retained an element of that. So you don't have to be in New York City to be part of Climate Week NYC. You can watch it at home. You can learn those experiences. So these are things that allow you to sort of have those opportunities.
Yeah, it's the same as Florida Climate Week. We have it in October, and it's all online, so anyone from anywhere in the world literally can join. What future trends are you seeing, and what should we be looking for this year?
So it's all. It feels like we've been speaking for quite some time in the climate movement about 2030. And I think some of us have forgotten that 2030 is only...
It's right around the corner.
Yeah, it's coming up. And so vision and creativity and passion are wonderful things, and they're really important. But they're only half the story. and it has to be looking at implementation. I was saying last night, I feel like operations and project management, it can kill us or it can save the world. We need to work out how we can make these pieces a reality. I mean, one example, I'm very aware of a wonderful project that is using hydroelectric energy from the Canadian-US border to power New York City. It's going to see a massive reduction in emissions. And for those gas-powered stations in Brooklyn, it means the young people in those areas, often poorer areas, are no longer going to have these emissions. And they've just knocked down that power station because this project went ahead. The reality of getting these projects off the ground, though, even if you've got the money, even if you've got the talent and the skills and the political backing to make it happen, there are things like the permitting processes. There are numerous checks and balances. It's bureaucracy. Right. You can't have a 6-year plan when it takes 15 years to get a major project signed off. And so I think we need to focus on the boring back end, the detail that makes these processes go faster. And I think for people looking to get into climate, it is a very exciting and very interesting and inspiring world. But I'd say don't forget some of those more boring subjects that you learn at school, spreadsheets and all the rest of it. These are things that actually are really bloody important. Sorry, that's an English swear word. Can I say that?
Yeah, I'm sure. So, anybody in the audience has any question for Adam Lake here from New York Climate Week? Thais?
I don't have a question, but I really I'm gonna confess that our Climate Week came from New York Climate Week. We stole it. We kind of say, well, if it's happening in New York, Florida is the #1 state being affected by climate change. So we brought it here, we brought it during COVID, and we do it online. But that is the capacity of what you do and how your ripple effect is being...
It was inspired.
Exactly.
Cheeky, yeah. But it's brilliant. I mean, I think in this world, we're in a non-profit world. We're in the business of changing things. Sharing ideas is the thing that's going to make us achieve so much. Interestingly, I've been speaking at Climate Group for some time internally about how can we make sure that we have more Spanish content. Our executive director is originally from Colombia. It's something she's really keen to get in, and we've been doing a lot of work internally about, we're going to try and do something at the White House with journalists. We're going to try and look at different elements that we can do. And then I sit here this morning, and I'm like, oh, wow, you guys already do it. I'm going to steal that. But seriously, though, it's about finding organizations and thinking, wow, we need to collaborate on this. Like, speaking to Carlos earlier on, like, the answers are in this room. I promise you, every single person here will have an ambition, whether it's big or small, and what you want to achieve in climate. And the person who's going to allow you to do that is probably also in this room. So, oh, hello. Is that a ringtone?
That's not my phone.
But no, go out, talk to people. It might be relevant, it might not. But I think that sharing of ideas is absolutely what this is all about. And it's great to be here. My first time in Florida, by the way. So it was so thank you for welcoming me.
Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question,
over there.
And you pretty much beat me to it when you talked about the Latino community and reaching out with bilingual education. And so now that you've beat me to that question, I'll ask you my second question. And maybe you can give me a combined answer. And that would be, if 2030 is right around the block, what would 2050 ambitions look like? And what does incorporating, now that you've seen what we do as a Latino community and how we come together, what does that preliminary vision look like for you as a collaboration between cultures and populations and geographies look like?
I mean, I think it's a difficult and complex question, but one I'll definitely try and have a go at. I think the theme from our whole conversation is, I can't say what the answer is, and I'm not sure anyone in this room knows exactly what the answer is, but I think if we keep bashing our heads together, we're going to find it. And so I think doing specific things like incorporating different thematic areas of verticals and events like Climate Week, or when we go to COP, or G20, all these other things, by ensuring we keep pushing ourselves to make sure that we are bringing these different groups together and engaging, ensuring that we use our position working with corporates to ensure that's a story that they're hearing too, and ensuring that we use that story with the governments that we work with to ensure they're working like that as well, I think the answers will come out from it. And I do think this is something that can happen in the next few years. This is about changing culture, changing the way of working. That's not the complicated bit. We either weren't aware it's a problem or we weren't aware that the solution is just around the corner. So I feel very hopeful. And certainly with Climate Week coming around the corner, absolutely committed to making that one. I don't want to say the first step because I feel like you guys have put in many steps before on this, but we'd certainly like to pass on the baton. I'm using so many metaphors today.
Well, hopefully these kind of events inspire the rest of the United States, and we can have Texas Climate Week and every single state Climate Week. Well, thank you very much.